right, welcome back, and this is where we begin this particular discussion. But remember, you can follow this broadcast on all our social media platforms. We are live on Facebook, you can tweet us on KUTV, that is on Twitter at KUTV Kenya _ and you can also follow us and of course even tweet me on KUTV, that is KUTV _ Kenya at Ouma events. The hashtag to use is primetime news. Now, we want to kick off this discussion of Madaraka Day, and just to take a look the journey that we have taken since independence. It is 60 years down the line. Is there something that you can really be proud of as Kenyans? Well, and to kick off this particular discussion, I want to tweet, or rather to quote for you from a book that was once wrote by Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, just to set the foundation of this discussion. Now, according to Jaramogi Odinga, that is, his book envisioned a Kenya that was unapologetic about its Kenyanness, and a Kenya that could stand on its own feet in a world that is unfriendly to the African people, and as Kenya that is capable of enterprise and development in a field beyond our shambas. And Tom Mboya, in his book Freedom After, that is labeled, he reminds us that the great things are made of series of small things, and that the making of a nation is the work of many small events and transition, small failures and success, he says in his book. And now joining us in the discussion is Professor Fred Ogola, that is governance analyst, and of course later on joining us on this particular discussion is Mark Bichachi, that is communication strategist, and he'll be joining us live via Zoom. Now, gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. I will begin with you, Prof. Yes. Well, it is 60 years down the line, and of course, do we have much to celebrate?
Yes, Evans, first of all, I can say there's a lot to celebrate, but of course, there are also some things that are not yet worth celebrating. But if we begin, for example, with the speech that was made by the father of the founding nation,
all right,
and that's where he illustrated what is called the Kenyan dream, and he had to talk about the three major enemies of the country. And of course, he mentioned one, which he said it is a disease. He talks about the issue of ignorance, and also he talks about the issue of, if you like, poverty. And I think that if you look at all economic blueprints, all manifestos of all people who have been trying to run a nation, whether they are running from the county level to the rest, they have been circulating around those three things. Right. So you can imagine that life expectancy at independence, meaning the possibility of you dying, was around something like 42%, meaning that if you live beyond 42%, it was by God's luck. But now life expectancy in Kenya is 62.8%. Literacy levels were around 38%. Now we are doing 82%. Poverty index at independence was something like 59%. Now we are doing around 17%. But remember that even if the poverty levels have gone down, the population has increased so much so that with the 17.5% poverty index, we are having more than 8.9 million Kenyans who are at risk of death. So there's a few things to celebrate, but the only thing we can celebrate about is that you see the correlation between illiteracy rate, which is growing, and poverty levels. You realize that even the more we become educated and we have more literacy, the more we're having poverty. And that's the sad thing. Why I'm trying to say so is that Kenyans have never used their intelligence or the goodness of this country. We have had professors of law. Do we have the best constitution in Kenya? We have some of the best doctors, but some of them go and work abroad. We don't manufacture medicine, yet our very own are working for Novartis, Modanta, working in the US, working in Europe to produce so that they sell to us. So what I'm trying to say is that if you look at the Singapore example, the Lee Kuan Yew went and said that let me choose the best and brightest to help me run my government. So that's for meritocracy. So we went to look for them in the US, gave them incentive to come to work in Singapore. We have not seen this happening. In fact, we have been exporting people to UAE to work. I know it's a short-term solution because these people are looking for where to work, but it's not a decent thing that we are trying to do as a nation, whereby now we are being told that there are number X of jobs in UAE. Why don't we be able to develop our human resource, make them have high quality, then be able, UAE, a country with the highest human development index is UAE.
All right.
They have more development. They are getting more benefits as a citizen as compared to other countries like in the US. So why are we going to become slaves in UAE, sending people to become slaves in UAE, while we can develop our human resource and grow economy? So there's a lot to celebrate. So we can say everything has been done, and everything else needs to be done.
All right. Well, Bichachi, have we lived up to the expectation? Of course, you're talking about 60 years down the line. Do we have much to celebrate?
I will not reiterate what my good friend Professor has said, because he's quite correct in the statistics he's given. But we must also remember that in terms of GDP, Kenya comes third in sub-Saharan Africa after South Africa and Nigeria. Now, this is no mean feat because, number one, we must remember that Nigeria is an oil-rich country and South Africa has the largest deposits of gold and diamonds on the continent. Kenya instead has built itself up from the bootstraps. The hard work of our people is the reason why Kenya is where it is. Now, is there still a lot more to be done? Yes, there is. We are not yet a first world country, and we all wish to live in a first world country, but we have made great strides. Kibaki famously found our economy at less than 10 billion US dollars. He grew it to 45 billion US dollars. Uhuru Kenyatta got it from $45 billion and built it to $105 billion. So in terms of raw numbers, we have actually made great gains. But what I find most interesting is, ironically, yesterday, we had two individuals who are being vetted for senior positions in this country. One is someone who is going to be in charge of our central bank, Kamau Thuge. Now, he is being vetted to make sure that Kenya does not slide down the path of default of a currency on free fall, and to make sure that he guides the country into the future. At the same time, Kenya has also chosen for the first time a member of the intelligentsia, a recognized public figure, to make sure they take care of the security of this country. Now, why do I bring this up? There are two things that matter. Two. Because if we were to consider manpower, and Professor Ogola has made a very succinct and accurate presentation that Kenya does not lack manpower, neither do we lack intelligence. What are the other two things that Kenyans need to succeed? Number one is security. Number two is a fiscal environment that is stable and secure. Now, in terms of security, we are choosing someone who is experienced. We are choosing someone who knows the security industry, and even more importantly, has had experience with our judicial system. Haji has to deliver for this country to ensure the security of our people, that when they're transacting, they're not going to be robbed. When they're doing transaction, they're not going to be defrauded. The trust level in this country has to increase, and that will also affect our foreign direct investment, and that will change the lives of Kenyans.
All right. Well, we'll come to the the appointments and all that, but I want us to talk about the three things that our co-founder find it as the most urgent thing to discuss: the disease, ignorance, and poverty. Now, It is 60 years down the line, and of course we have at least 4 successful government, and still yet we still have some few of these challenges that we have to tackle as a country. Well, and I'll come to you, Prof. Is it time we reimagine the dreams of our founding fathers as far as fighting these the 3 key aspects that they label that they are the enemy of progress?
Yeah, I think the thing is that we use that very matrix, and I agree with my brother there, Mark, that there's a lot of strides made, but then what is happening is that what is the Kenyan potential? The Kenyan potential is that we are at a very unique position that if we just get someone who can reimagine this dream and unite the country, in fact, people are ignoring the need for unity. Like you've heard, there are some things we have to denounce. What we lost track of, my brother Evans, is that we lost what is called citizenship, what I would call kwa Kiswahili in uzalendo. We lost uzalendo. Why is it at this time someone is talking about secession? Why is it at this time someone is talking about shareholders? If you have a country of shareholders, we are losing track because we want a country of stakeholders where everybody is a stakeholder, everybody is a citizen, everybody is patriotic citizen. Somebody is proud. I saw something in South Korea which was very interesting, whereby young people go to social media to tweet to their friends outside South Korea telling them, please come visit my country, there's this and this to see. You go to our social media, if young people can invite anybody from outside Kenya to come and see what is in Kenya. We have a lot of corruption. We have issues of pending bills. We have issue of pending salaries. We have issues of corruption. We have, our newspaper is busy with the negativity. Can we go back and say it? If we continue preaching this negativity, are we going anywhere? So I agree with what you are trying to say. We need to come back to say, okay, let us stop dwelling on the past. Even the current administration, don't tell us about what was there yesterday, what was there tomorrow. Tell what is in front of us. Cost of living is high. What is in front of us? There seems to be a lot of division in this country. Let's accept it. Because remember that election also, we had an election whereby a third was with Raila. A third was with Ruto. A third didn't vote. And even another third didn't even register. So we're having so many thirds that are divided. Why don't we have one thing whereby we are going to find that we have one government? So if you look at these governments, the government of minority because even only a third voted, total votes was a third. So we are looking at a point whereby who are these people who are not interested to vote? What were their concerns? Why did the young people who should be voting to have a good government, because they're the ones who need better healthcare, they're the ones who need better education, because for us, our education time is over. If you tell me to go to class now, I don't have time. I'll say I'm a professor already. So the young people who need this education, who need this health, who need this employment, why were they not at the forefront of voting? It's because they don't believe in the system. So we need to reimagine and say, our founding father, Mzee Hayati Jomo Kenyatta, he even told the guys in the Northern Frontier, if you think you are going to divide this country, go to Somalia. Meaning that Kenya, in fact, the Prime Minister says, is a unitary state of 47 counties.
Thank you.
Meaning also there is nothing like that Kenya is a unitary state of shareholders. We need to come together as a country and start looking, for example, it's very clear how to solve the issue about health. Abuja Declaration says if you put 15% of the GDP in health, you will cure the health issue. We are putting 7%. Understand? It's also very clear on education. Vision 2030 midterm plan was supposed to be about reviewing the education system to prepare the human resource ready for takeoff. We didn't do that. And also when you come to the issue of poverty reduction, Kenya was supposed to move to a middle class economy. And now we are looking at everything being reversed by the issue of Hustler Fund. Those are not priorities for this country. In fact, the current government needs to come back and say, given the founding fathers' vision for the country, Vision 2030, what are the economic priorities for this country? When we prioritize politics over the economy, then we move away from the founding fathers' vision. And I'll tell you, we don't go very far. It is
Okay.
right there.
All right.
The president said it. And I want every Kenyan to go and read
Okay.
the president's inaugural speech, the one for Jomo Kenyatta. When he made his first speech,
All right.
all answers are still there.
Thank you. Well, Bichachi, of course, Kenya is one of the countries that have vibrant constitution, and our democracy, it's fair to say, is one of the best in Africa. Well, it seems like we are making one step forward and, of course, two steps backward. Is it lack of clear leadership and, of course, leaders that have the interests of Kenyans at heart, or what is just happening? Why are we still struggling?
Well, one of the things that we need to understand is that Rome was not built in a day. President Mwai Kibaki brought a great strides into our country. President Uhuru Kenyatta did the same. He brought us to great strides. We saw the implementation of devolution. We saw the implementation of the court system. We saw the implementation of many projects. Now we have a new government, and this government is working to make sure that it delivers. But there is, in all these three administrations, one thing has been missing, and that has been a philosophy for the country. Over time, what has happened to Kenya is Kenyans have turned to be more individualistic and more selfish. We do not vote for the betterment of the entire nation. We do not act in the betterment of the entire nation. Instead, we have internalized corruption. When Moi was in power, corruption was about a chosen few. Now, every Kenyan, whenever a truck falls on the road, instead of going to save this driver, we look at the back of the truck to see what we can steal. What has been missing in our discourse as a country as we celebrate 60 years old is the question of what and who is a Kenyan. When the Japanese go to a stadium, they clean the stadium. When a Japanese tells you they'll build you a car, it is a true car. When a German puts a mark written made in Germany, you have confidence that what they have made will work. Question: when we put a sticker that says made in Kenya, this has not been made by the government. It's not been made by a politician. It's been made by a Kenyan. How much trust can you put on it? Kenya no longer has as big a constitutional problem, in as much as our constitution has things that need to be fixed. Kenya no longer has as big an infrastructural problem as President Moi left us. Kenya, however, has a serious leadership problem. It has a serious moral problem. And if you look across the world, and my good friend Professor Ogola mentioned Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. One of the things the good professor forgot to mention was the moral discipline he brought into the nation of Singapore that stands to date.
Okay.
What is the moral fiber
Fair
of
enough.
a 60-year-old Kenyan?
Okay.
Is it a 60-year-old wise person in retirement, or is it a 60-year-old thief looking for more opportunities to steal, looking for jobs in government, which young people should have?
Well, thank you. Well, gentlemen, because of time, I want us to switch, our focus of discussion to today's speech. That is President William Ruto's today's speech, and of course, and I'll begin with you, Prof. Did today's speech, of course, meet your expectation from the head of state?
Well, to say in totality whether it's either met or didn't meet doesn't make sense. We can say in which area is met the expectation and which area it fell short of expectation. First of all, looking at organizing this speech to this ceremony in Embu, this was very symbolic. It was good. New completed stadium. I'm sure you could see the mood there. The celebration looked very nicely. I'm sure everybody appreciated. And I think you could enjoy it. I was watching it when I was seated at the lounge here when you are broadcasting. It was a very nice celebration. And also the president talked about the issue of how this nation was founded. And I think that was a very good part that he emphasized. Where I got disappointed is that, this country was founded by some leaders. There was no mention of any of them. He jumped from actually, I can describe for you the president's speech into 4 steps. The first step was the pre-independence challenges Kenya had. There was no freedom. Kenyans was not having a right to self-determination. Then the second part of his speech immediately jumped to, then we got independence, and then he started talking about the problems that was there between independence and when he takes over. He said about tribalism to have pervaded this country. He talks about division and domination by other people. Then he said Kenya Kwanza came to liberate everybody. I can tell you for sure that maybe I don't think everybody agrees with him, but I think when there was a founding nation, founding fathers, I'm sure it's good to recognize them. It's good to recognize them even if you don't like them. And that's the part of unity, because I was waiting to say, where are you? When you're talking about being given a $105 billion economy, is there something to appreciate about it? Or you just jump in to start now bashing? And I think that the bashing part was not nice.
All right.
But then the third part of his speech was about what I call promise spree. He went into a promise spree. Now, in 3 months, Boda will have an electronic engine. There is no using of fuel. He talked about launching of the group fund for Hustler Fund. He talks about myriad promises. And in fact, this government has always been told, please, why don't you promise and deliver? Because at the moment, we just want delivery. We don't want promises, because we have enough promises to wait for. For example, the issue of the gas, we waited, we are being told we wait. So what are we waiting for? Because the gas was supposed to go down by 1st of June. Today is 1st of June. So what we are saying to say, the president's speech had some expectations met, but some main expectations. All Kenyans today were asking about cost of living. It was not addressed, and that's the main thing I have to say. He would have improved about it, and let's wait and see whether whatever he promised today will be met.
All right. Well, thank you. Bichachi, what was the takeaway from, of course, Mr. President's speech today? What is the one thing that really, caught your attention today?
It's interesting because the thing that has caught everyone's attention is the border moving from petrol to electronic modes of transportation. Now, the thing that struck most is 2 things. That I think this country is still at a place where we are bitter from 2022 elections, and we cannot consider each other as Kenyans. I think that is one thing that was missing, that we need to reconcile. We need to accept that even though my brother does not agree with me, we have one mother called Kenya. But most consequently is the country is at a place where it's on tenterhooks about the finance bill. Inflation has really put a toll on every Kenyan, and that's where we are. Now, the head of state, in my mind, should have spent a lot more time crafting 2 things. Number 1, talking about the unity of the country. And number 2, talking about how he's going to ease the pain of every citizen without necessarily going back to what Kenyans are now calling permanent campaign mode, where it feels like he's permanently campaigning. That's what needs to change, and that's what was missing in this particular Jamhuri Day. But in terms of taking it to Embu and beginning to show that these 60 years of independence have not only impacted Nairobi and our fancy cities, that is Eldoret, Kisumu, and now Nakuru, but even Embu has developed, expanded, and is able to host its people. So all of these things were significant.
All right, well, gentlemen, actually, we are really out of time, and we really appreciate your input in this particular very noble discussion. And call it a day for this one.
Maybe just to say something, Evans.
All right,
short.
pretty quick, just 1 minute.
The clash in today's Madaraka Day celebration was between what is Kenya's priority
All right.
and what is president's priority.
Okay.
He was telling them house levy, while Kenyans say cost of living. So if you look at his list of promises,
All right.
do you think that they really rated the priorities of Kenyans, or it was his priorities? So for me, I would say that if the president wanted to impress people, he could go on to address their current, which are very important needs, like my brother Mark has said,
All right.
rather than coming with his own list of priorities. For example, the Hustler Fund is not Kenyan's priority.
Okay.
The issue of housing levy is not Kenyan's priority. Kenyan's priority is cost of living, how to ensure the education is done, ensure health is sorted. And
All
if
right.
the president is, I was wondering,
Okay.
am I in Kenya when I was hearing him saying we are going in the right direction and everything is going well, it's rosy
right.
and fantastic,
Prof.
versus what is the reality on the ground? And for me, that's why I want him to reconcile.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. You are actually